This is the engraver I bought for the NFA engraving, Viver 400 watt, 200 by 150 millimeter engraving machine. Here's the machine set up. It connects to a laptop via USB. Here's the Thor X6 software it comes with. I tried setting it up on a Windows 10 operating system and it did not work. I had this older laptop sitting around. It's a Windows Vista operating system and it seemed to work, so maybe it needs older operating systems. The problem with this machine is it's meant for like nameplates and thin materials. This is it set at its highest setting. This is the adjustment knob here. You can see it kind of going up and down. But even at its highest setting, right there, you can't get an AR receiver in there. So here's how I got around the issue. Take out the screws here that hold the engraver onto the gantry, lift it off, and I just put some nuts in there, one on each side. They're probably 3/4 of an inch or maybe an inch. Some longer screws, then they attach right back in there, and that gives you the clearance you need to get something thicker in there. I'll show you how it works. The manual that comes with this thing is just absolute garbage. It's Chinese just translated to English and you can barely read it half the time. So it just takes some playing around with it and figuring it out for yourself. You'll just start with some scrap pieces here, aluminum, steel. I even tried on some round stock just to see how it worked. Trying different fonts, different sizes, different heights above the material, just everything. So you just type in what you want here. You can drag it around and the needle will move to exactly where it's going to start. We'll start it somewhere up here on this edit screen. You can change the height and the width. Pretty simple. Let's throw on some aluminum here and we'll move it so it's on a fresh area. There it goes. Put some magnets on there to hold it in place. And you come over here to this print screen and hit the start button. That's all there is to it. Sky's the limit, right? Well, I don't know what the limit is, but I'm gonna try 2 nuts here. In total, that gets you about 2 1/4 inches of clearance. A single nut was not enough for this next piece. I need to get this AK receiver in here. Now I have plenty of clearance. I didn't need all of that, but that goes to show you, you can get quite a bit more than this thing is designed for. Well, I'm amazed to report, but the double nut job worked. So I've done all these on the machine now. Yeah, AKA, that was the thickest. The AR, I've already Duracoated over that one, so it's kind of gone away, but there's a 1022, my Obras pistol, and there's a Scorpion Evo receiver. And you can even do suppressors. So I think I'll show you a little more about it. After running this thing, I've realized I really had to figure it out myself, so why not show you, so maybe save you some time. Definitely the trickiest part with this thing is the fact that it doesn't clamp or hold the pieces at all. So I just held them by hand. At times it got a little bit sketchy. It definitely works best if your piece sits flat, like this one doesn't really rock, so you can just hold it down. And there is a trick to when you're programming this thing, and I'll show you that also. You might have to get creative, like on the 74 here. I was engraving the other side, so it wanted to rock on the scope rail. So I found 2 drill bits that were the same diameter as the height is above the receiver. Electrical taped them so they wouldn't scratch it, and then taped them to the receiver. Flip it over, and that way it doesn't rock on there. If you're engraving a suppressor, it can get a little bit tricky, but it's very doable. You just have to do it one line at a time. The machine just has these plates here that are screwed into the surface, so you could probably hold your suppressor in there, but it might want to roll a little bit on you. So I just had these magnets, luckily. You know, one sits into the square there, the suppressor gets the other one, and you just kind of hold it there, and that gives you, it's not a perfect hold, but that way when you hold it down here, it's not going to go anywhere. Engrave your first line, rotate it, engrave the second line, rotate it a little bit. You just have to do that for as many lines as you're going to do, but it works. I'll show you around the software a little bit more here. The manual is total junk, but the software here isn't that bad. It's really pretty intuitive. You just come here to this new mark. There's a few different options here. I haven't really played around with them too much, you know, shapes and maybe QR codes and other stuff. I just use this first option here. It's just a text mark. You click it out there. You can come up here, and this is where you change the size of it, the different fonts here. I'll show you, you know, it's all pretty basic font, which for engraving like this, you don't need anything too crazy. On that AK I did, it wouldn't fit in here horizontally like an AR receiver does, or small pieces will. So I had to go vertically here, and it wasn't very difficult at all to figure out. You just come over here to angle, call it 90 degrees, and it flips it. You know, move it around, the arm moves, so you know exactly where it's going to start. A good trick here, let's see here, in this typeset. So these buttons over here are very useful. They're going to tell you exactly how big, or really what room that your engraving is going to take up. As I pointed out, all these little squares, they're each a centimeter each, so this is going to be, what, just over 3 centimeters long and not quite a centimeter wide. So if you don't have, you know, centimeter ruler or something, when you put this over your piece and you hit this top left button, that needle is going to move to the very top left of where the engraving is going to be. You hit bottom left, it's going to move to the very bottom. You know, same thing for bottom right, top right. So you can get it to move around the exact footprint of the engraving. This gets pretty helpful when you want to put a couple lines in here. So you got another one here. Rotate it. You just double click on it when you want to change it. And so for this one you say NFA Engraving. And whatever you have out here, it's going to do it all. So when you click on one, come over to this typeset, get it set just where you want it. You can click on this one, same thing, click on these buttons, it'll show you just where you want it. You can drag it around and the needle's going to follow it, or you can use your arrow keys and it just barely bumps it. So it's kind of your fine adjustment there. I was using that quite a bit. Getting it set just where you want it. You know, you can decrease the font. If it takes up too much room, move it. So that's pretty handy. Let's see here, what other options was I using? I didn't experiment too much of this stuff. Let's see here. Before you do anything, I always hit this reset button, because sometimes, you know, maybe it gets moved just a little bit. So it might be a little bit off. I don't know. I always just play it super safe and hit the reset button, and that would move it all the way to the top left, and that way you know you're pretty much calibrated. And then I always have this enable dock, or I can't remember which way it goes, either clicked or not clicked, but that way it won't return home basically. So if it's not enabled, when it's done engraving, it's just going to stop. Then you can pull your piece out, not worry about anything. If it is enabled, when it's done engraving, it's going to return home. So if your firearm is sticking up over here or over here, you know, it might try to drag across it. No, it's not going to be on an engraving, but it might grab it and try and drag it, or just scratch over it. And so try to remember to always have that off. Yeah, you can hit the start button there, or on the machine, it's got a start button and a stop button. So if you're over here and you're going along and you say, oh, I don't want it to go anymore, something's going wrong, you just mash that stop button and it'll stop. Hopefully prevent it from doing too much damage. Only thing I really wish it had would be some sort of, you know, capturing device or something that would hold the work down. It doesn't. So it's the only really tricky part, you know, other than, it's a little dark, but, you know, my my custom spacing job there, I wouldn't do that double nut again. It worked for what I was doing. I only used it once. It was a pretty short engraving. If you're going to do multiple, or you really would just want to play it safe, use something bigger. Use a bigger nut or something else that is exactly the same size on both sides. You want that thing standing vertical, so you don't want one side bigger than the other. But it worked. This was kind of a risk I took, but yeah, I got this thing 2.5 inches or 2.25 inches off the work area, so you could pretty much stick anything under that. I'm sure you could probably go a little bit higher on it, but it's really starting to push the limits. Oh, it's dark in there. You see those bolts are extended quite a ways. I got those longer bolts in there. But with this thing, you know, with how you can rotate vertically, I would say it can engrave anything. You know, so you can set them in there either way. You can get this thing lifted up. So it was a pretty good buy. Use a coupon code and it's under $450. I'm planning on using it until I don't need it and then selling it. So if you do a bunch of engraving, it's definitely a way to save money. Or if you just want to do things yourself, it's kind of fun too. So one last thing here. Just as I was finishing up this video, I received an email back from their customer service. I emailed them when I couldn't get the software to run on my Windows 10. They offered some suggestions. I didn't even try them because I got it to work on the Windows Vista. But one other thing, so this is the manual that came with it. You know, it's semi-helpful, not much. But they also sent at the same time this other manual. It doesn't have a copyright in it, but the file name had 2015 in it, so it might be a newer manual. I printed it out and kind of read through it. It doesn't offer much help either, but it's a little bit different. Why they didn't include this originally, I don't know. I think they should have. I printed it out, even though I know how to work this thing. That way, when I sell it, I'm going to include it with it. So that way the next person might have a little easier time. It does have a link to a YouTube video in here. I don't think it's from them. It's not even in English. It kind of shows you, if you just watch it, it's like 15 minutes long. some of the basic workings of it, kind of like I did. But hopefully between all this stuff, you can get this thing figured out and use it for your needs.